that most people, they wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis or loss when they reach their lowest denominator, that they finally make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? That we can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or we can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. And we are literally in a new era right now. And this era is about information. And in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. We don't need a doctor, a teacher, a governor, a priest, a rabbi, a minister to gain information any longer. Because we have access to information, people are taking their power back. Technology affords us the ability to research anything we want to research. And every time you learn something new, you make new synaptic connections in your brain. In fact, learning is making new connections. My interest then is to not only measure just the brain, but we also know that it requires 2 ingredients for a person to begin to make a significant change. Number 1 is a clear intention, a vision, an idea of the future. And when a person begins to select a new idea in the future, if they can begin to emotionally embrace what that future is going to feel like, because they're so caught up in their inner vision, they begin to feel an elevated emotion. So if we're not defined by a vision of the future, then we could say then, for the most part, we are living by the memories of the past. And we could say then, a person who's in this state believes in their past more than they believe in their future. It means they're romancing their past and more in love with their past than they are with the future. That they're telling the same story of their past instead of telling a new story of their future. And the latest research in neuroscience shows that memory is creative, which means then 50% of what you talk about in your past isn't even the truth, that you make stuff up. That means that so many people are reliving a miserable life that they never even had. And they do that because it reaffirms their identity. Feels familiar. That going from the old self to the new self is the neurological, it is the biological, it is the chemical, it is the hormonal genetic death of the old self. And in that void, in that unknown, that is the perfect place to create from. That means then, people say to me, I am in change and I can't predict my future. And I always say the same thing to them. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? And the act of closing your eyes, this is neuroscience now. You can teach people how to do this and have them mentally rehearse what they're going to do. We do this in corporations. All of a sudden, the person gets so present what they're about to do, and they start rehearsing it in their mind, that their brain doesn't know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. And all of a sudden, they start to install the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for that day. The brain looks like they've already done it. And if you keep doing it over and over again, the hardware becomes a software program. And what do you know? All of a sudden, this person starts acting like a happy person. Well, they installed the circuits to do that. They start thinking in new ways. There's no magic there. So then, we work with companies and organizations about this concept about creating a culture. How do you change a culture? And what is culture? There's a neuroscience to culture. You have a brain, and you share the same brain as the person next to you in a very, very gross anatomy sense. And because the gross anatomy of the brain is very similar from person to person, we have some very universal traits. We smile when we're happy, we frown when we're sad, we sleep at night, we grab a stick the same way, and structure and function are highly related. But then we have our individual traits, and our individual traits is a reflection of how we're wired in our brain. That is the gross anatomy compared to our minute anatomy. And you're wired differently from the person sitting next to you because it's a combination of nature and nurture. And is it nature or nurture? The answer is yes. It's both. So then, your experiences, the things you've learned, and your genes wire your brain. So then, what is the bridge that connects it? Well, we could say then, It's like having a hand. Everybody has a hand. That's the gross anatomy. And then there is your fingerprint, and that's your individual trait. That's the mind anatomy. So then the bridge between our universal trait and our individual trait is called culture. And cultures are created by environment. And what is environment made of? People, objects, spaces, things, places, and time. And creating an environment that is novel or unique creates a change in culture. Now, cultures are usually based on the past. So then we have this idea of changing a culture by a vision of the future that we would call our future present cultural reality, or then there is the memory of the past. That is our past present cultural reality. So then if you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, you're beginning to change your state of being without something in your outer environment. This is all happening in your inner environment. If you're living by the past, you're creating memories from your outer environment. So then, there are 5 types of motivation that we've studied. The highest form of motivation is called duty motivation, purpose motivation, or what we call mission motivation. It is a vision that's bigger than you. And the bigger the vision that is more inclusive, the more selfless it is, the more a person will be inspired. That is the highest form of motivation. Transforming individuals in order to transform the world or the culture is my mission. I live by that every day. It gets me up in the morning. I can travel for 3 weeks at a time. I don't mind doing it. I come home for 4 or 5 days and I leave for 3 weeks again. That's my life because I'm mission motivated. The next form of motivation is called personal conviction motivation, self-starter motivation, or what we call entrepreneurial motivation. Not the highest form of motivation, but still a high form of motivation. And this is when people say, I'm going to do this because I said I'm going to do it. But people who have a mission motivation naturally have personal conviction. It falls right in line. The next form of motivation is called ethics motivation or morality-based motivation. This is good and bad, right and wrong, positive and negative. This is polarized. When the person is bad, they want to be good. When they're good, they want to be bad. And it's not a very high form of motivation, but a person who has mission motivation or purpose motivation, who has personal conviction aligning with it, they have a sense of ethics and morality. It just kind of falls into place. The next form of motivation is called ego-centered motivation or self-aggrandizement motivation. This is where people doing it for attention or fame or recognition. Not a very high form of motivation, but a person who's mission motivated, who has personal conviction, who has a sense of ethics, will naturally get attention or recognition. And the lowest form of motivation, check it out, is called money motivation. And it is the most selfish form of motivation. And we can spot that on a person a mile away. Would you agree? So now, what is mission, what is purpose, what is intent? The cute thing about this is that purpose or mission is ongoing. There's never an end to it. You could have a purpose to go east, and you will never run out of east. You could have a purpose to be healthy, and you will never run out of health. There's always more health to have. You could have a purpose to be wealthy. There's never an end to that, or abundance, whatever you want to call that. You could have a purpose to gain knowledge and information, and that's ongoing. So then, bringing a vision into reality means that we're grabbing from a world of possibilities and we have to bring it into the world of reality. That it starts with a thought, and when it ultimately manifests as matter. In quantum physics, it's called the wave function. The wave of the atom is really where possibility exists. The particle is the collapsing of that energy into materialism. The immaterial to the material, or we could say from a world beyond the senses to a world of the senses. So then, if you have a vision or a purpose, then the next thing to do is to set up goals in alignment with your purpose or your vision. And goals then help us to stay on purpose. And the more you are on purpose, the easier it is for you to maintain your goals. So then, if you work with a department, you work with sales, you work with management, you work with HR, whatever it is, if you can get a subculture of people aligning to a purpose and then all of a sudden sharing similar goals, the outcome of that department, you will begin to create quite a bit of motivation and quite a bit of inspiration amongst that community. So here's an example. If you're in the United States, if you had a purpose to start in Los Angeles and go east, if you set up certain cities as goals along the way to get there, as long as you are heading east, those goals help you to stay on purpose. And all along, every goal then is proof that you're headed in the right direction. You could have a purpose to get healthy. And then there are certain behaviors and choices that you have to make in order to get healthy. These are specific goals that you would want to arrive at. It means that you would have to make some changes in the way that you do things.